in keeping you as my slaves. You have a vested interest in reacting against me and preventing me from having you as slaves. That is the real problem. And I'm afraid the question has not to be directed towards me. I have to direct the question towards you to ask, what are you going to do about it? Over to you for your answer, sir.
Non-governmental organizations, I think, have become quite adept with technology, and I think it's been mentioned here that networking is no longer just the presencing of warm bodies coming around the table, small tables or big tables or in conferences, but also virtual conferencing with the use of technology. And therefore, I would like to approach the second question and relate that as well to the first question by mentioning that the necessary nexus, if you will, between the global and the local, so that while one laments the fact that non-governmental organizations may not in their big numbers be found in global arenas of decision making, that is not to say that they are not present and active and working in the local arenas. What is quite lamentable, very lamentable actually, is that the local actions, the stories and the very struggles of people on the ground, their triumphs and their struggles are not the ones that are being inscribed in print and shown in broadcast. So that's why when a non-governmental organization who has the wherewithal to bring a grassroots perspective, and that is what CoNGO in the last 2 years has been doing, which is that under my leadership, I said there will be no proxy representation of the very stories and struggles of peoples on the ground. Under my leadership, I say, gone are the days when, a researcher in a northern university, which is not, of Indian origin, or is not someone from Zimbabwe, but the issue is about democracy in Zimbabwe. Say, well, someone from this university who is not a Zimbabwean can very well talk about the situation in Zimbabwe. My challenge has been to measure accomplishment, to measure the effectivity of non-governmental organizations' presence in any of the fora, local or international. The very stories must be on a first-person narrative of the very people whose stories need to be told. I've talked of a different paradigm to counter an all too economistic understanding of globalization, and that paradigm is what I call glocalization. That issues in the world are at once global and local, and therefore you can indeed prefigure or imagine a new glocalized paradigm where both the global and the local matter simultaneously, and therefore it demands actors, stakeholders from a multiplicity of venues and localities to address some of the most intractable issues in the world today.
We're going to shift for 2 questions to Metro, but I just want you to know that we will have time for a second round of all universities, and perhaps we may even be able to take 2 questions each from all the points. So do prepare your second rounds. Over to Metro for 2 questions from that end.
Hello, my name is Anthony Mell. I'm a freshman at Farley Dickinson Metropolitan Campus. Recently, NGOs, or at least some, have been accused of being co-opted by governments with which they have had intimate cooperation on issues. Does this allegation have merit, and does this process compromise the efficacy of NGOs?
This is the CoNGO question. That you've sold your soul to governments, the devil.
The CoNGO at the moment is not in a place where it is able to distinguish and make public whether a certain member is a GONGO and however else you want to describe the other. I wouldn't want to say that the real NGO, but it's in the fruit that an NGO, it's in its accomplishments, it's in what it does, it's in what, not only what it professes to do in its objectives and aims that are written in paper. It has to be measured on the basis of what they do on the ground. Are they able to better the lives of peasants, of farmers who are struggling against high cost of pesticide? Are they able to surface someone who has been extrajudicially executed, someone who has been disappeared? Are they able to fight for the rights of women in a situation where traditionally both culture and religion and therefore political praxis has not made that available? So if NGOs profess to value those global aspirations for which the United Nations has been organized and make that visible on the ground, the CoNGO, non-CoNGO distinction eventually fades. Now, there are many NGOs, as I said, that receive money from governments, but there are also many NGOs that receive money from specific industries, and therefore the issue of independence again can only be countered by the efficacy, if you will, of their action with respect to bettering the situation of peace and security, with respect to bettering the sustainability of the planet, and number three, with respect to bettering the condition of humankind, particularly with the affirmation of human rights and human dignity. I mentioned the three major reasons for why the United Nations has been organized and why it continues to be a relevant institution. So the only counter to whether one is a CoNGO or not is by the very action they do on the ground. And peer NGOs will have to show for themselves and with their counterparts how one's action is better than the other. I think without canceling out and being violently opposed to the other NGOs.
We didn't get a second question from Metro.
Mr. Bautista, what is the current impact of the NGOs on decision making at the United Nations?
Do you have any impact at the moment on decision making in the UN, or are you just talking with hot air?
That would be self-serving if I said, of course. We do, and I think the impact of non-governmental organizations is in both their singularity and in their plurality. Singularity meaning Fairleigh Dickinson, as a newly minted non-governmental organization, creates its own impact by, again, through its academic initiatives, redefining the academic curricula so that global learning is made possible and preparing young people as diplomats. I'm sure while our statesman ambassador Kamal is here, he is one with me, and I have heard him say that from among the young people will come new insights, new innovations that might yet redefine international affairs and international relations in ways that we have not seen before in traditional politics and configuration of both the academic discipline as well as the practice. And therefore, one's impact is measured by the very thing that we are now doing, which is that we are forming and informing new minds that may yet innovate on how the intractable issues of the world made with solutions made impossible by the many artificial divisions as well as deep-seated divisions that we have created. So impact, yes. In plurality, meaning when a specific issue is called for at the UN, say for example, the impact of the economic crisis on everything that we do, be it by delaying the Millennium Development Goals, NGOs gather together and make a collective voice. So the joining of voices together is the matter of public opinion and its influence in decision making. And that to me is the most important at the international level for why NGOs must insist on having their voice